What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Tomorrow is San Diego Regionals, and I wanted to talk about a few decks that I think could be really good plays for the Regionals and how exactly I would play them. Before we get into the video, I just want to shout out my sponsors, PotownStore.com. You can use code Celio there for 5% off of PTCGO codes, and they're emailed to you instantly after purchase. And also flipsidegaming.com. I write weekly articles for them. You could read those articles for free and use code CELIO all caps for 10% off of any order $10 or more. So the first deck I want to talk about is going to be ADP, but before we go into this specific deck, I just want to mention, I'm on limitlesstcg.com here looking at the day 2 results from Daytona Beach last weekend. And so if you don't already know the results, or at least the top 8, Guardian did win the event and ADP got second. I think ADP was already really popular and really strong. My top 2 decks going into that event were ADP and Malamar. They got second and third respectively. I did not expect Guardian to perform well. I thought it was way too risky with Ability Zard and Baby Blounds being pretty popular. And they did end up being popular, those fire decks. But I expect Guardian and ADP to both uptick in play, so ADP will go from being popular to even more popular, and Guardian had 21 people play it last weekend in Daytona, so if we have the same amount of players in San Diego, I'm not really sure. Daytona had 464. I think there will maybe be like 30 to 40 at the most Guardian, so maybe a couple more will sneak into day 2. So because of the uptick in play of both of these, I think Ability Zard gets better. Evan Campbell did play Ability Zard and placed 15th. I think Baby Blounds could also potentially get better, but I don't think Baby Blounds is as secure of a deck because it takes a really hard matchup to Mewtwo and Malamar, which I think will be in the top 4 most played decks. But yeah, like I said, the first deck I want to talk about is ADP, because I think ADP is a really good play again this weekend. Looking at Xander Perro's list, him and Will Jenkins played similar lists. Will got top 8 and Xander got second. So things I would change for this weekend, I would play a second Cryogonal like Will did, because there is a ton of Pidgeotto hype for the weekend. I don't really like Pidgeotto, but I think you would want to beat it and take the collateral damage that you're beating Dolls as well with the second Cryogonal. I really like the Mimikyu, and I think that should stay, or you should add it to Will's list for the mirror match. And then I also think a Lucario Melmetal Tag Team GX is definitely a reasonable addition because of the Guardians and the uptick in Guardian. And if you expect Guardians to make day 2, that would weight your choice even more, because you'll want to win those games in day 2 versus it. That's much more important than hitting like a Rogue One in day 1. Then if you expect like 5 to 8 to be in day 2, you have a pretty good chance of hitting it. Also, I think Tag Switch could be a really good, like, under the radar card in this deck that people aren't taking into account. So if you wanted to go with like Tag Switch and Lucario Melmetal, or Tag Switch and Mega Lopunny Jigglypuff Tag Team, that's also a very, very like bursty card to lay down on the table with 0 energy and then go attach Tag Switch KO. And this deck does allow Tag Switch as like a consideration as a one-of, because of the Rosa, which can just grab a trainer card. And of course you're playing 4 Jirachis as well, but Rosa is like an instant search out for the Lopunny, the Tag Switch, and the basic energy. You already have 2 energy on an ADP, you go retreat Jirachi, attach Tag Switch. So I think that's a consideration. That could be very, very good in the mirror, so you could potentially replace the the Mimikyu with it, but I do think the Mimikyu is very good. The Mimikyu is tested and tried and true, so if you're not going to try out the Lopunny or the Tag Switch, you don't have time to test it, then probably stick with the Mimikyu because that's already been proven. But I do think Tag Switch could be like a cute card paired with something like the Mega Lopunny as like an unexpected consideration in the deck that people aren't taking into consideration when they're leaving something alive or allotting damage to the ADP or the Keldeo, when they would maybe do the other if they knew what was up, or overbenching GXs and EXs. Yeah, other than that, like I said, the Luke Metal is a consideration. Second Cryogonal, I think you should play like Will did. And then the Mimikyu is really cool for the mirror match. So ADP is one of the top picks. That's something I would be considering going into the weekend. My next one is Ability Zard. So Evan Campbell was the only one in top 16. There were 2 in day 2, I believe. Let me just confirm that. So Evan Campbell at 15th, and then Sierra Hunter at 47. So there were just the 2. Something you have to keep in mind, a lot of people just think that this deck is autopilot because they hear everyone saying, oh, well, you either hit Welder or you lose. But very simple sequencing errors can lead you to not hitting your Welder or not hitting the outs to what you need. Let's say that in a turn you need to hit a switch and a switch and a Pokemon communication to win the game. So you need to switch out of your active and you need to Pokecom for the Ninetales. So you could Stellar Wish first and then Welder. And if you Stellar Wish into one of your 2, then you're Weldering for 3 cards and there's only one possible out to hit. But if you Welder first with both the communication and the switch into the deck, and you hit one, that gives you better odds of hitting the other one off of the 5 for Jirachi instead of going in for 1 with a 3 off of Welder. So just like simple sequencing errors, I'm sure there's plenty to make throughout the course of a game with Ability Zard. But it's not as simple as it looks. Definitely skill can still come into play. It's just much less skillful decisions on like your opponent's board, or like obvious things like which Pokemon do I attack with now, or what do I 9 Temptations up. Like those kind of things are really, really obvious. But the small sequencing errors and the micromanaging that you might not even notice you're doing incorrectly are what separates Ability Zard winning a tournament like LAIC and Ability Zard only having 2 placements like it did in Daytona. I also think the meta could be really good for it this weekend because of the Guardian and the ADP inflection. And they also played the Zebstrika. I was going to mention the Zebstrika is kind of your out to Birds. If Birds is playing an attacker like Jesper Erickson played the Frostlass to take down the Zebstrika, then maybe that doesn't work anymore. But also another tech that Evan Campbell played was the Cyrus Prism, which your opponent chooses 2 bench Pokemon and shuffles the others and all cards attached to them into their deck. This could be really good versus both Dolls and Pidgeotto. If they have a board of like all 4 Pidgeotto, Guru, and then you go Cyrus, they're going down to 2 Pidgeotto, and you're putting excess cards into their deck at the same time, which they don't like. So I think the Cyrus is actually really cool. Usually I would be against like adding in this kind of off one of supporter thing, but I think it can actually really swing games. So I would consider keeping that in if you're going with Ability Zard this weekend. And like I said, I think the meta is just shaping up really well for it again because of all of the Guardian and ADP hype. And lastly, for the decks I would play, I don't think you can discount Mewtwo. Like, Mewtwo is just a force to be reckoned with. I think it's still one of the 2 best decks in format. And I prefer Gustavo's list over Tanner's list because Tanner and John played 9 Fire and 2 Psychic, while Gustavo played 9 Fire, 3 Psychic, and 1 Weakness guard. And I think having the extra energy, especially the 3rd Psychic energy, can be really big when you need it for your cross division so you don't whiff it. And also, Gustavo was playing the Naganadel GX. Let me just check if Tanner and John were as well. Let's see. Yeah, they were also playing the Naganadel GX, and I like playing the 3 Psychic over just the 2, so you can hit that more consistently. But I think Mega Mewtwo, Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team GX. It's just a really strong variant still. It gained the Guzma and Hala and the Mal and Lana, which are really great cards for it. You have great catcher now instead of the custom catchers. And I kind of alluded to this in the meta discussion video a couple days ago that I don't really think the meta shapes up too poorly or too great for Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team. I think this deck is just inherently strong, and it would take a whole lot for me to say don't play Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team this weekend. I still 100% expected to see it in top 8. I do think it could win the tournament. And I prefer this list just because of the extra energy for consistency. That being said, I do think there's going to be a lot of Pidgeotto, a lot of Guardian, a lot of ADP. I think the top decks played in order will go Mew, ADP, Malamar, Guardian, Ability Zard, and then Birds. I expect Baby Blounds to fall off in popularity because it did really poorly. Even though it looked pretty good for the weekend, swinging into Guardians and ADPs, I think maybe they just hit some bad beats or they only played against Malamars. I'm not really sure what happened there, but I don't think the deck is as good as of an aggressive option as Ability Zard is this weekend, because Ability Zard just kind of takes really strong matchups to Guardian and ADP. I know. And also the Cyrus Prism tech is really cool too, so I don't think you should undermine Evan Campbell's top 16 placement with the deck. I also should mention that Drew Kate said that he feels Guardian is favored to even versus Ability Zard, but I do not think you should be worrying about that notion going in against random Guardian players. Maybe Drew Kate, he's obviously very good. He won the whole tournament with Guardian, and he has a ton of other performances to back up his skill as a player. But I don't know if you should go in fearing Guardian in general. Maybe if you play against a very good player, yeah, it's going to be close. But I think if you play against someone who picked up the deck just because Drew won the tournament with it, you're going to overrun them with Ability Zard easy. So like I said, my top decks for the weekend are ADP, Mew, and Ability Zard. Surely that does not mean don't play the other deck that you want to play that you've been practicing. Comfort picks go a long way, and I think Drew really showed us that with Guardian. He had a lot of faith in it. He's played the deck a lot before, and he took it to first place. So don't listen to me and other people on the internet over your own gut. If you feel really good about a deck, then I think that means you should play it. But the meta I'm expecting shows that ADP with some minor changes or things closer to Will's list, like the double Cryogonal, and keeping the Mimikyu from Xander's list should be good. And then the Ability Zard should be good. And then Mewtwo is just always a great pick. It's just such a strong deck. So I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of stream of consciousness that I did over my top decks and what I'm thinking the meta will look like and what the meta should shape up to be favorable for in San Diego tomorrow. Good luck to all of you that are going. Of course, thanks for watching the channel, and subscribe if you have not already and you enjoy the content. I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.